Hailing from the days of Medarot 7, it is the untouchable and feral Azure warlord type based off the historical figure of Lu Bu. It is CHA00 Chuugen Haoh, with a kit of Fight Boost, Charge Blade, Break Hammer, Wield Legs, and the leg ability of Weapon Master, which adds a percentage of the leg's resist stat to power when attacking. Now, as a model that a lot of veterans to the Medarot series may come to know and love, especially if you've been playing longer than, say, Medarot 7, you already kind of have an idea of what this powerful Lu Bu type brings to the table. But much like the erratic and untamable warlord that Lu Bu was, Chuugen Haoh most certainly takes into that respect how he fights on the field, and doesn't really require anyone to assist him while he's on the field, albeit he does require a handful of specific circumstances to be capitalized on, can still be a very powerful force to be reckoned with, and essentially leave anyone in his dust when it comes to trying to outspeed them. Fight Boost on the head part is a support-based skill that, once activated, will boost the melee damage of himself and all allies across the team by 50% as long as the buff remains active. Now, as long as that buff remains active, any kind of melee skills, again, 50% power boost, which means if you weren't already hitting like a truck before, well, guess what? You're about to very quickly within the span of a single turn. Charge Blade on the right arm is a conventional melee skill, but also comes with a little bit of a damage caveat. And that caveat is, upon consuming a small amount of charge, 10% at normally, 5% of your charge gauge at fully capped 5-star, but it will deal a multiplier of bonus damage relative to the amount of charge percentage that you have in your gauge. Naturally, if you don't have a charge in the gauge at all, or not enough for Chuugen Haoh to consume, that means you will not be getting that damage bonus that you are hoping and banking on. But with a base power of 1247, it is kind of hard to argue why he needs it, because he already is sporting a pretty powerful base damage at that level before any other modifiers come to it. Hammer on the left arm is a gravity attribute skill that means that this gives Chuugen Haoh a very solid footing in the realm of heavy punish. So if he is taking on anyone that is packing the weight at 2 or more heavy parts, they will most certainly be feeling the weight and the punishment for packing all that weight with the highest damage modifier possible. And because it is pierce damage, this means even more so that he is going to be making sure they are going to break something. Now, if the enemy is packing 1 or no heavy parts at all, probably won't be dealing nearly as much damage, but with a base power of almost 1100, again, kind of hard to argue there in terms of the kind of power that he does leave to be desired. But if you do factor in the leg ability of Weapon Master, which will convert a percentage of his melee resist into base power, that does mean that he will be hitting just a little bit harder than what these base numbers are reading. So even if he does not touch or capitalize on the required conditions to meet Charge Blade for your charge gauge, or Break Hammer for the enemy weight, he is still going to be hitting notably harder than before, even if he is packing the weight himself at double heavy between his arms. Wield Legs means that he will be packing a very high base mobility, and that is most certainly par for the course at a base speed of 907, but this also does come at the cost that Wield Legs are notably the most picky when it comes to the terrain compatibility, and that means that they only have 2 terrains at best, 3, and that one of those is including Cyber, which everybody gets anyway on S rank, that he's going to be really good on. Otherwise, he's going to be suffering at maybe a B rank or even a C rank at best when it comes to what he's able to bring to the table. Most often not, he is going to be ranking between C and D when it comes to pretty much any terrain that is not road or cyber specifically. And this alone makes Chuugen Haoh very difficult to use conventionally, especially if you are planning to use him as a pure set. Now, if you exclude the terrain compatibility or advantage, he is still packing some pretty solid numbers across the board too between power and armor. When it comes to armor, he's packing about 4100 for the head, about 3300 for the right arm, 3600 for the left, and legs at 4300 means that he is relatively chunky as a powerful warlord would be when it comes to packing on the armor and making sure he can stay on the field as long as possible. On the topic of armor, when it comes to damage reduction, he is packing almost 1200 base melee resist and over 1400 base shoot resist, which means that he is rather impressively bulky in one form or another, and he can hold his own remarkably well, whether it be fighting someone up close and personal or trying to exchange blows and catch up with that enemy sniper trying to take pot shots from afar. Now, a base mobility of evade of 826 isn't too shabby. It means he's not going to be dodging or grazing a lot, but some caution is going to be advised, and just know ahead of time he's not going to be dodging or grazing a lot, and that's not really going to be his emphasis while he's on the field. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I still do have to rate Chuugen Haoh a very solid, middle-of-the-road, I'd say 6.5 out of 10, and the reason I rate him on the lower end of the middle scale is primarily because he has a lot of notable weaknesses that hinder his overall viability and damage output on the field. Charge Blade is requiring a percentage of Metaforce charge in order to make use of that. Break Hammer is reliant on the enemy making use of more than 2 heavy parts, and Wield Legs means that he's already going to be facing a very bad terrain advantage on pretty much all terrains except 2, which again is including Cyber, which everybody gets S on anyway. So he is powerful, and he can be put to very good use with very high base power between Fight Boost and Weapon Master, but you do have to make sure that you can capitalize on the terrains that he's good at if you want to make use of him at all. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him just a little bit higher at a 7 out of 10 for these same reasons. His wheeled legs are impressively bulky with some good legs and a heavy slot and a heavy capacity of 2, but if you are able to make use of them on wheel-based terrain or wheel-compatible terrains, then you can really start cooking. Otherwise, Charge Blade and Break Hammer, and even Fight Boost at that, you really can't ever go wrong with any of them, but just bear in mind that because he is packing 2 heavy parts himself, and both Charge Blade and Break Hammer we do have several non-heavy variants of, so there are other options. Even though he can dish the pain with Break Hammer himself, he is also capable of receiving it all the same because he himself is packing the weight in addition to speed.